Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is now 5:30, and I will call this regular meeting of the Burnsville City Council to order. It is our tradition to stand for a moment of silence, and we invite you to join us. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Tonight's meeting is being conducted in person and online. Members of the public may attend in person or watch this meeting online at burnsvillemn.gov/meetings or Comcast Channel 16 or 859. The public can also participate through Zoom by joining us at zoom.us/join. More information is available on our meeting's webpage and in the council agenda packet. The first item on our agenda is announcements, and our announcements have to do with all of our upcoming meetings. Regular council meetings are scheduled for Tuesday, September 5th at 5:30 p.m. and Tuesday at September 19th at 5:30 p.m. We have a work session that's scheduled for Tuesday, September 12th at 5:30 p.m. And then we have special work sessions. We have a budget and property tax levy on Tuesday, August 22nd, that's tonight, after this meeting, and that'll be around 6:30 p.m. We have a governance meeting that's scheduled for our participatory budget, and it is the council's dialogue, and that's Tuesday, September 5th at 6 p.m. We also have a special work session scheduled for the budget on Tuesday, September 12th at 6:30 p.m. All meetings of the council are held here in the council chambers unless I announce that there is a change to a meeting environment. The next item on the agenda is citizens' comments. This is the opportunity for anyone in the audience or online to address the council on an item that is not on the printed agenda, not an application form that will be coming before us at a future date. Is there anyone who wishes to address the council? And I think Mr. Larry Nutters is signed up to speak. And good evening, Mr. Metters, and give us your name and address for the record.
Good evening. My name is Larry Metters. Our address is 2144 South Skyline Drive here in Burnsville. We've been residents, my family has, since 1967, so there's been a few years that we've lived in the city. The purpose of my call is, or statement tonight or question tonight, is I probably have more questions than I have answers, and I'm not sure, so I will start with the monthly bill. And on the city's monthly bill, I see the word water meter base charge, and I see also city franchise fees. Mm-hmm. And in December 6th of 2016, the city notified the citizens that they were going to replace water meters. And at that time, they told us there were approximately 16,700 residents or water meters in the city. And at that time, the charge was $1.20 a month. In February 22, the charge went to $8.82. In March of 22, it went to $9.26, and March of 23, it went to $9.49. And 16,700 meters times this kind of money, it generates a ton of money. And I talked to the mayor, and she returned my call, and I talked to Councilman Gustafson, and you returned my call, and I've had several several employees call me, and I appreciate the communication. But it just seems like it's just a never-ending hemorrhage. And the gentleman I talked today, and I apologize, I don't remember his name, but he was kind enough to sort of explain the fees and how things work, et cetera, et cetera. And he said that some of the water meter fees were used to rebuild the fire station. And I can appreciate the endeavors and whatever is involved in creating and keeping the budget, the fees of the city as reasonable as possible. But my concern is there another way to eliminate fees? Fees for some reason just bother me. I don't know if it bothers other people, but there's this connotation of a fee and a place to put it, and what are we going to do with it? And we get promised, well, it'll be here, and all of a sudden it disappears. It's used for other things. And as I said, the gentleman today said the water meter fee is allocated in a certain location and it cannot be touched.
Yeah.
And that I appreciate.
Yeah.
If we look at federal and state government, there's always a pile, and all of a sudden the pile disappears, and there's always a recall for, well, we need to, whatever. The franchise fee also went from $1 to $4. And my question is, the franchise fees, do the companies pay this in addition to citizens, or is it just a citizen's fee?
Mr. Meadows, thank you for coming and asking the question, and I'm glad that you talked to many of our staff members about the fees. And whoever you talked with this last time around told you that those fees are restricted funds, and it is restricted by law, so they cannot be used in other areas, and they go for that particular use. Okay. So people who use that product, if you will, are charged that, and then it is restricted and it's used for that service. Now, with the franchise fees, that fee is also restricted. And it is every property, even in the city of Burnsville, where there are nonprofits that don't pay property tax, they have to pay this fee. That allows everybody in Burnsville and every business in Burnsville, churches included, to pay that fee. That allows us, and those fees are also restricted. Okay. So everybody, whereas in the city of Burnsville and in other cities, and any nonprofit organization or government business, they don't pay property tax.
Okay.
The rest of the citizens pay for them. But with a franchise fee, they pay.
Okay. Okay.
So it is an equitable method that allows us to continue to maintain the assets of the community that the community asks us to be good stewards of.
Okay. Is there I don't know what the word, a cap on these fees as you go across, or is this tied to the?
I would ask that you come, because you see things continue to increase. The cost of services, the cost of product continue to increase. And so that's that. And I think, is it September 12th that we're having the fee schedule? Or is that?
Mayor and Council, that is correct. Your September 12th special budget work session, you'll consider the fee schedule that will include utility fees.
Yes. I would ask that you come to that work session.
What was the
because
date?
it'll give you a good understanding of the fees throughout the whole organization in Burnsville. So you'll have a good understanding of all of the different fees.
Okay. What was the date?
September 12th, and it's a
12th?
Tuesday, and it'll be in this room.
Okay. All right, that answers or allows me to at least speak as opposed to not saying anything and continuing to wonder.
Yeah. Well,
Thank
come
you.
and learn
Okay.
and understand.
All right, thank you.
Okay, great, thank you. Mrs. Collins, anyone online?
No one.
Is there anyone else who wishes to address the council that did not put their name down? And is this for an item that is not on the printed agenda and not on application form that will be coming before us at a future date?
Are we able to speak on an agenda item that's?
Okay,
as
that will
maybe-
come later.
Come later?
That's
Okay.
not this time. Okay, did you sign up? Ma'am, did you sign up to speak? Okay, I will go through and call everybody's names who had signed up to speak. Okay. Is there anyone else? Seeing no one, I will. Yes, please come to the dais and give us your name and address for the record.
Darlene Metters at 2144 South Skyline Drive.
Very good.
And when I get the bill, I look at it and I get frustrated because it's regularly the fees go up. I want to know why the fire station is included in a water meter bill. That has not happened in the past, so what made that decision now to have that fire department? Why isn't it in our regular home fees?
Okay, I will, our chief financial officer and our deputy city manager, Jenny.
See, I'm wondering why the
Rhodey.
change. It's like a hidden charge to me.
Okay. Mrs. Rhodey.
Yeah, the fire station is not part of the water meter fee. I know the gentleman you talked to earlier today, I'm wondering if that was the franchise fee discussion, and the franchise fees are going to pay, they pay for city facilities, including buildings like the fire station. The water meter fee is strictly for the
Well,
cost
I
to provide
understand
water
that.
service.
I'm talking about the water meter base charge.
Yep, the water meter.
That was something new when this fire station was built.
No.
And it has never been in the past. Why is it now? And why is it increasing? It's gone up 3 times now, that particular fee.
The water meter fee has started in 2016.
But I'm talking about the water meter, that base charge that is now $9.49. It started out at $8.82 in 21, and it's gone up to $9.49. So why is that base water meter, the meter itself, why is the fire station included in it? And why is it increasing?
The fire station isn't part of that fee, but in 2020, the city did a comprehensive utility rate study. At that time, we combined 2 fees that we had, a base water charge and a meter fee, and it became 1 meter base charge that really, it accounts for the costs of providing water service to each home. So it did change in amount. We had a corresponding decrease actually in our consumption charges. So the charge per gallon of water used, those decreased. It was really kind of a right sizing of fees. In terms of base fees, those tend to, what those need to account for is really that infrastructure and providing that infrastructure to provide water service. So although coincidentally, the timing coincided with the building of the fire station is not included in the water base fee.
And I would
My
suggest that-
husband was told that today. And why did it jump from $1.20 to almost $10.
And
When this is supposed to be, you know, a software system that should pretty much handle itself unless we have a company off-site that we're paying monthly to use that software.
It isn't just the meter, it really is the entire, it is the fee to provide water service to the home. So that includes the infrastructure, all those expenses, the maintenance expenses of the water system. And those fees are set aside in a separate enterprise fund, and that just goes to providing that water service.
So it changed radically from 2016 to now, to current.
Correct, because we combined, there was a different base charge in addition to the meter fee, and we correspondingly decreased the consumption charges.
I guess
So there,
my main problem is the fire station being tacked on to the water bill. I don't get the association of that.
it isn't
That's
in the
a
water.
city
It didn't.
property, physical property.
It didn't.
It's not included in the water bill.
Well, okay, this base charge.
That's just water treatment
Yeah.
charges. That's just the water treatment infrastructure. That base charge is not associated with the fire station. And I'm certainly
Well,
happy to provide more
That's not what my
detail.
husband was told today.
Yeah. Ma'am, so instead of trying to help you to understand what somebody else told you, our CFO gave you information. And I would suggest that, Mr. and Mrs. Meadows, that you come to our work session that has to do with fees.
Okay. Okay, then I'll just drop it. And do we ever get audits on these kinds of things
Every
that
year.
are available?
Every year. Every year, we have an independent auditor as well as the state auditor.
Is that
Every year.
something that us as citizens can see it?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, so I can go online and see it.
It's on our website.
And it's, yeah,
Absolutely, sorry.
yes, you can see our auditor's report.
Okay,
Absolutely.
okay. Okay, thank you.
And I think more importantly, I think Jenny's already provided you a copy with her card. We're happy to answer any questions that you have to make sure that there's an abundance of clarity for you, and we get you that information as well.
The next item on the agenda is additions to the final agenda, and this is for emergency items only. City Manager Lindberg, any emergency items to come before the council this evening?
Nothing from staff, Mayor.
Thank you. Members of the council? Okay, thank you. We will then move on. The next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. This is a grouping of items that's considered to be routine and will be enacted by one motion. But an item on a consent agenda can be removed for a separate discussion and vote. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes an item on a consent agenda to be removed for a separate discussion and vote? Mrs. Collins?
No one online, Mayor.
Okay. City Manager Lindberg, does the staff want an item to be pulled?
Nothing from staff, Mayor.
Members of the council, may I have a motion to adopt the consent agenda, please?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay, and the motion carries. Thank you. We are now at the regular agenda, and the item on the regular agenda is a continued item. And this is the application of Sustainable Safari LLC for a plan unit development amendment and a permanent animal exhibition permit for an indoor zoo at 915 County Road 42 West. Presenting this evening is our Community Development Director, Mr. Jeff Thompson. Mr. Thompson.
Thank you,
Good
Mayor
evening.
and Council. Happy to walk through the background in this. I know we have some audience members here today, so I'll provide just a little bit more context on some of the background for this. So this is an application we have received from Sustainable Safari to locate a facility in Burnsville Center, located on County Road 42. As a reminder, this site is zoned mixed use and also part of a planned unit development for the entire mall, and then guided in our comp plan for mixed use as well. In short, the proposal is from the business and the applicant is to locate a zoo within the interior of the mall. It would involve an interior remodel of the former Old Navy space in the mall. There is a direct access from the tenant space to the outside just to allow for some of the service operations, particularly around the movement of some of the animals that would be in there. But aside from that, there is no proposed exterior use or operation of this business proposed as part of their applications. There are two applications before the council. I'll talk about both of these during the presentation. The first is an amendment to that planned unit development for Burnsville Center, and that's really the Burnsville Center, as I said, is a part of a planned unit development that articulates all of the uses that are permitted within the mall. Oftentimes they're very specific and kind of enumerated specific uses, and zoos are not currently included with that PUD, so the amendment would simply state that zoos, from a land use and zoning perspective, are a permitted use within the mall property, recognizing that our comp plan, that it's consistent with our comp plan and implementing zoning. The second is for a permanent animal exhibition permit. That would be a permit issued by the city and by the council, and again, I'll walk through that in a little bit more detail for your background. As a quick reminder, this was actually initially reviewed by the Planning Commission on July 10th. That's when they held the official public hearing that's required for the PUD amendment. At that meeting, they did unanimously recommend approval of that PUD amendment with an added condition that the city verify that all of the applicable licenses are confirmed and active for the business. After that meeting, we received a number of public comment that were concerned around public health, safety, and welfare. And so at your review on July 18th, you tabled it and you referred it back to the Planning Commission for a review and asked it to be brought back tonight to the August 22nd meeting. So we're bringing these items back for you. When you tabled it, you asked us to review the animal regulations, all the animal regulations from a federal, state, and local level, and then propose conditions related to protect the public health and safety concerns that we had heard in some of those initial comments. So working with our attorney's office, I won't read through this certainly, but we worked with our city attorney's office to comprehensively review both the federal and state requirements. There are a number of them that relate to the exhibition, possession, sale of wildlife or non-domesticated animals. And this is a comprehensive list of that. There's the Federal Animal Welfare Act, specific provisions of that address the Animal Welfare Act, and then a number of state statutes that require licensing by different state agencies, that require us as the local animal control to report on any animals that are here, as well as any enforcement actions that the city takes as part of any sort of animal control activities. And again, there's a number of permits that are required by the state depending on the type of species and the operation of the business. Our ordinance also, our Title VI, which is our police regulations, Chapter 2 within there is our animal regulations, again, comprehensive of how we regulate animals within Burnsville. What our ordinance states related to this type of business is that we allow the keeping of non-domesticated animals is prohibited except with a permit from the city. And we allow for a temporary permit for any temporary use for less than 30 days, and we've issued a number of those throughout the years for community events or special events that occur. We've issued those. And then it also states that public zoos or other institutions engaged in the permanent display of animals may be issued a permanent permit by the council. So that's what we're bringing forth to the council in addition to the PUD amendment, that specific permit that's called in our city code for the permanent display of animals. That permit is to be reviewed and issued by the council. That's explicit in our ordinance. As part of our application, we since we've not issued one of these before, we worked with our police department and our city clerk's office and other departments to modify the application. We asked for detailed information on the types of animals that would be there, the activities, the methods of care, the cleaning, insurance, staffing, and all of that was included in your packet. The applicant submitted all that information, and we included it in your packet tonight for your review. We also, as part of that, we asked for submission of all the state and federal licenses that they have to comply with our review of that, and verified that they have all of the required licenses in good standing from the federal and state government that are required for this type of business. And then lastly, we asked for the USDA inspections that are done for the past 2 years, just to have a sense of what the inspections were finding. Again, all of that was submitted by the applicant, included in your packet for your information. So we are, there's two actions for the council to consider tonight. The first, again, is the PUD amendment, and the approval of that. That was reviewed again by the Planning Commission based on your redirect to them. They didn't have a public hearing, but they took additional public testimony then, again, recommended unanimously that approval of that PUD amendment with some added conditions, and those are that they have to have a permanent permit from the city in good standing. They have to comply with state and federal regulations, and then ensure that if they make any changes to the floor plans to accommodate new animals or any sort of changes in their business, they just need to comply with the state building code, particularly concerns about ventilation and safety of the public that's in the space. And then the second action for the council tonight to consider is the permanent animal exhibition permit. And we have added all of these conditions. These are all outlined in your written background report. But in short, they say that you can't have any animals that you're prohibited from having. You have to comply with all the federal and state animal regulations. You have to have licenses in good standing at all times. And then make sure you're keeping us, the city, updated of any animals that are in the site so that we can make the reporting requirements that we have as the animal control agency. Again, compliance with the state building code. And then the last one is we consulted with the Minnesota Department of Health. They indicated that they don't have any special permits or licenses that they require for this type of business, for a zoo. But they do have a program that kind of advises and makes recommendations for this type of business for sanitation and public health purposes. And so we just added a condition that they consult with the Department of Health and implement any best practices or recommendations that the Department of Health has. I understand the applicant has already done that and has done that as part of their other business operations and anticipates that they will implement those recommendations from the Department of Health. The last piece is the ordinance does not explicitly say the length of term on that permanent animal exhibit permit. We are recommending that it be reviewed annually by the council, generally annually. That gives us some additional enforcement tools that could be important. So first, because they're conditions of approval, those are ongoing operational conditions that they have to continually met. So they have to keep those permits in good standing and at all times. The annual renewal and review process just allows us to, again, go through this verification process, go through the inspection, review, again, all those items we do. And certainly the council would have the ability to take any enforcement action on the license for any non-compliance of those conditions. And then lastly, we did include that, I mentioned that, but the animal permit is also included as a condition of the PUD amendment so that they are connected, the PUD and the animal permit. So with that, we are recommending approval of both the PUD amendment and the permanent animal exhibition permit. I'm happy to stand for any questions. I know the applicant is here tonight as well if the council has questions for them.
Councilmember Gustafson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. You've been out to Maplewood to look at what they've had out there. You've talked with their staff out there. Have there been any complaints, concerns from the city out there as far as that operation goes and how that's been going? And I do have a follow-up from that too as well.
Yes, Mayor and Council, yes. Actually, a number of staff have been out to the Maplewood operation. Our building inspection staff, our other community development staff have been out there to observe it, to see it and see how it operates. We've also talked to the Maplewood staff and they have not related any complaints or issues in the years that that's been operating within Maplewood Mall.
Okay. And secondly, as we do the review annually, who would do the inspections? We're not into that business, so who does that so it comes back to us for review?
Mayor and Council, the USDA, as part of their license, does the inspections under their USDA license. So we're not proposing to do any sort of compliance inspections with federal and state law.
And is that an annual inspection they do then, do you know?
I don't know if it's, I know during the pandemic they curled back on them, but yes, with the reports we've seen, they tend to have annual reports and inspections from all the inspection results we looked at over the last 10 years.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. One of the things that I just wanted to also outline, you did say that the DNR license is held for native species, and that the Department of Fish and Wildlife also has regulations, and the business is also subject to. And so all of these agencies have all worked with the applicant and have no concerns with their practices.
Mayor, that's correct. From their licensing and permitting standpoint, they have all of the requirements in place from the state agencies for the lawful operation of the business.
Okay, thank you. Don't go too far. We have some folks who want to speak. I'm going to go with Burnsville residents first. There's a list of folks here who want to speak. And so, Ms. Heidi Greger? Give us your name and address for the record.
Yes, I am Dr. Heidi Greger, and I live at 2608 Highland View Lane in Burnsville, and have done so for the last 32 years. I live in a beautiful home, I vote in every election, and I pay my taxes. And for full disclosure, I am also the program manager for the Animal Rights Coalition in Minneapolis. I wanted to start by saying that Mr. Pills has made quite a production about attempting to be and hoping to be accredited by the Zoological Association of America, or ZAA. But the Association of Zoos and Aquariums, the AZA, is the gold standard for the care of animals in captivity. AZA serves as an accrediting body for zoos and aquariums and ensures accredited facilities meet higher standards of care than required by law. So why isn't Mr. Pills pursuing accreditation from AZA? Why is he only pursuing accreditation from ZAA? The ZAA is primarily a collection of roadside zoos and petting zoos that have chosen a name with an acronym deceptively close to AZA. ZAA is simply a clever, well-marketed sham intended to give a legitimate facade to roadside zoos and petting zoos that regularly violate the Animal Welfare Act and mislead the public for profit. Just to give you one example of the difference between the AZA and the ZAA, AZA standards for, say, 2 tigers is 1,800 square feet, the size of a small house, and a pool to swim in. ZAA allows 2 tigers to spend their entire lives in a 361 square foot concrete chain link box with no pool. So 2 tigers spending their lives in that small ZAA approved enclosure would be like forcing one of our domestic cats to live their entire life in a large dog carrier. There are many other differences between the two. I'll let you do your own research on that, but to be accredited by the Zoological Association of America is nothing like being accredited by the Association of Zoos and Aquariums. I want to point out too that the annual inspections done by USDA, they're not annual. With luck, they're biennial. And as far as I know, there are only 4 inspectors in Minnesota who have to inspect hundreds and hundreds of venues. They're just not able to keep up with that. They won't be inspected every year or probably even every 2 years, unless, you know, some people complain. At last week's Planning Commission meeting, Mr. Pills stated that he allows the animals to breed and that all the animals he uses in his exhibits live out their entire lives with him. Do you really believe that? Because I don't, and I would bet my life on it that that is not true. One final thought is that at last week's meeting of the Planning Commission, one of the planning commissioners stated that he had attended the Maplewood Mall location and he bought one of the little cups of food, and that all the animals would run up to him and other visitors there with little cups of food. Well, in laboratory research that uses animals in experiments, it's routine practice to starve the animals or drastically reduce their caloric intake before an experiment. So I'll just leave that thought with you. I hope you will take the animals' interests to heart, that you will consider their interests for once over the almighty dollar, because that's what it comes down to, always. Thank you.
Thank you. The next Burnsville resident is Courtney White. Yeah, name and address for the record.
Sure. My name is Courtney White. I live at 11690 Langford Circle, Burnsville 55337. I've lived in Burnsville for 22 years, and I'm an election judge, and I love living here. But when I heard about this, I was really disappointed. And I know we have some other folks here that are going to speak to that, so I'm going to leave it at three high level. Number one is the animal welfare, which all of us can understand. Their physical, the stress, this is not their natural habitat, just on and on. They can become destructive, they can become disoriented. So there's so many reasons. Obviously, the human welfare, because there are 75 diseases that can be transferred from an animal to a human being without being touched. And particularly those at high risk are children who are going to be at the petting zoos, pregnant women who have small children, and the elderly. So maybe their grandparents that are taking care of them. So just following the CDC guidelines, it's just a huge risk. You know, it just doesn't make sense to have animals, a petting zoo in a mall. It's preposterous. And then finally, we have world-class Minnesota Zoo that is nonprofit, and it is in our neighborhood. And it does amazing work. And it's here. This is unnecessary, and they are nonprofit. This person is trying to come in and make a profit from this by basically utilizing animals in a way they were, out of their context. Penguins aren't supposed to be here. Kangaroos aren't supposed to be here. How can you have that in a mall? And it feels safe for everyone involved, including those animals. So those are my main 3 points. I think it would be a disgrace, and I think it would be a mark on Burnsville to allow something like this. I know the Burnsville Mall has been around. It needs new life, but this is not the new life we need. Thank you.
Thank you. The next Burnsville resident is Rita Ulrich.
Mayor, council members, thank you for this opportunity to speak. I did send an email today, but you may not have had a chance to see that, and I certainly understand your schedules would be busy on a meeting day. I'm rethinking one of my points in this, but I have spent quite a few hours looking at sustainable safari as well as standards for animal care, animal welfare, and they're not the same. And everything from feeding schedules and how much lighting is and what kind of lighting is recommended for animals. I will say that one of the things that worries me is that there's no limit on how many animals will be allowed in Burnsville Center with this. And at a minimum, there needs to be a limit on that. Whether that is the number that are cycled through or a number that's a cap for a daily basis. But he does say, somewhere in his application, I forget where because I read a lot of materials, that the full-time veterinary position will be filled once Sustainable Safari has a full collection of 1,000 animals. This will occur after a second location is established and running to capacity. Without a limit, the business can add as many animals as it wants. I'm rethinking the second thing, but at a very absolute minimum, require that the Sustainable Safari become accredited and maintain accreditation with the Zoological Association of America. And I understand its standards, it is essentially a trade association. And the standards are nothing like AZA. But it's something. And until state and federal law catches up with humane treatment of animals and public sentiment, that's the very least you can do if you go ahead and approve this. There are a number of misdirects in Mr. Pills's application, and one being putting himself in the same category with ZAA organizations such as Columbus Zoo, which is also accredited by AZA. The only one he lists that is not AZA accredited at the current time is the Pittsburgh Zoo, and that has arguably a higher standard because it's accredited by Animal Humane, an organization that is independent, site visits and investigations, and they have the highest standards. Now, asking for additional conditions in no way suggests that I think this is a good idea. I don't think it's a good idea. I think it's a terrible idea. And I think I agree with the previous speaker. It's a mark on Burnsville if it goes forward. And the more research I did, the more concerns I had. So please reconsider. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is from Brooklyn Park, Ashley Riddle. Name and address for the record.
Ashley, Brooklyn Park. I'm co-president of the Animal Rights Coalition. We're a grassroots nonprofit group advocating for animals in Minnesota. We've received a lot of emails about Sustainable Safari opening up in Burnsville. When I visited Sustainable Safari last year, I was immediately surprised and saddened to see 7 kangaroos in a not so large area. It did not seem like enough room for them. There are so many different species crammed into this mall, and I have a really hard time believing that they're all having their needs met. There weren't any employees stationed by the different species of animals, not only to ensure the safety of the animals, but the safety of the visitors, nor were they there to monitor how many snacks each individual animal was receiving. This is concerning. In the short time that I was there, I witnessed kids chasing a chicken who was wandering free, and while this might have been enjoyable for the kids, it was not enjoyable for the chicken. I can say that with a lot of confidence. A mall setting cannot come close to the natural environment these animals should be given, with plenty of space, diversity, and freedom. Instead, they're confined with little room to roam and nowhere to escape the loud sounds and commotion, should they choose to. I also noticed that visitors can pay to hold baby kangaroos. Kangaroos can live up to 20 plus years in captivity, and I can't help but wonder where all these kangaroos go as they're only babies for a short period of time. Beyond the concerns for the animals, petting zoos may introduce unnecessary risks to the public. For example, in 2017, 2 siblings, ages 3 and 5, contracted E. coli after visiting a Minnesota petting zoo. Sadly, the 3-year-old died. In 2019, a family sued the Minnesota State Fair after their 4-year-old became ill and was hospitalized after interacting with the animals. He was diagnosed with E. coli, and 11 other cases of E. coli infection stemming from the State Fair were being investigated at the same time. If you look at other similar operations such as Sequest, which is in the Roseville Mall, as well as many other places around the country, you'll find a long list of issues ranging from animal welfare to public safety. This seems really high risk and low reward. I genuinely hope that you will vote no on allowing Sustainable Safari to open here in Burnsville. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Jill Fritz. Name and address for the record.
Thank you, yes. My name is Jill Fritz. I live next door in Apple Valley. I'm also Senior Director of Wildlife Protection at the Humane Society of the United States. And as we've stated in previous comments and in detailed letters accompanied by all relevant documents, including USDA reports, we oppose the proposal to open an exotic animal petting zoo in the Burnsville Center. The public opposition that you're hearing on this is not an isolated case. Mall-based exotic animal petting zoos attract controversy wherever they try to open. Other recent examples include malls in New York and Florida, where plans were dropped for both of those following a public outcry. The USDA has cited the owner of this facility multiple times for non-compliance with the Federal Animal Welfare Act, and on 6 different occasions, USDA animal care inspectors and/or veterinary medical officers were unable to conduct those inspections because a responsible adult was not available to accompany them. We also have significant human safety concerns about the opening of the facility. The HSUS has found more than 330 examples across the U.S. of members of the public, including 150 children, bitten, scratched, or otherwise injured by wild animals during similar encounters. As we've mentioned before, in 2013, a lemur provided by a traveling zoo bit a 3-year-old boy while posing for a photo in Minneapolis. The boy was put on antiviral medication and given rabies prevention shots. In the Burnsville Planning Commission meeting last Monday, a commission member asked Mr. Pills about the likelihood of something similar to that happening at this facility. Now, as a local resident, I'm alarmed by this cavalier attitude and hope that officials would want to exercise an abundance of caution before exposing children in our community, including possibly members of my own family, to potential injury and deadly diseases, instead of just asking about the, quote, likelihood of it happening. But in any case, Mr. Pills responded by speculating about the number of incidents in which a neighbor's dog might attack a person. To be clear, random bites from domestic dogs are very different than incidents involving captive wild animals that are handled by the public. In these exotic animal petting zoos, a relatively small number of animals are responsible for a relatively large number of incidents. And of course, domestic dogs can be vaccinated for rabies. And the Minnesota Board of Animal Health encourages owners to keep those vaccinations current. But rabies vaccines are not licensed for use in captive wild animals or hybrids. So someone bitten or scratched during a wild animal public animal handling may need painful rabies prevention shots that could cost as much as $10,000, and the animal may need to be euthanized for testing. As a reminder, at the Maplewood facility, the public can hold, feed, or interact with raccoons and foxes who are both rabies vector species. So in the interest of human health and safety and animal welfare, the HSUS again respectfully asks the council to reject the proposal for the Burnsville Center. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Jenny Newgard. Name and address, please, for the record.
Hi, my name is Jenny Newgard. I live in South Minneapolis. I'm the practice manager of Twin Cities Animal Rehab Clinic here in Burnsville, and we've been a part of the community since 2007. I'm here to ask you to vote no on approving an exotic petting zoo in the Burnsville Center. Part of the oath for those of us in the vet med field is the prevention and relief of animal suffering and the promotion of public health. And unfortunately, exotic petting zoos violate on both counts. I know the community is eager to make use of the space at Burnsville Center, but fostering business like this is problematic for many reasons, and I think there are better uses for the space. First and foremost, it's hard to deny that exotic petting zoos are unnatural, outdated, and underregulated. Captive wild animals used for profit in this way are often extremely stressed, sick, depressed, continuously bred so their babies can be used for holding, petting, and pictures. And once they are too large to be of use or can't be handled, they're disposed of or sent to overwhelmed facilities. Captive wild animals can be unpredictable. Even as babies, they can bite and scratch, thereby potentially spreading viral, bacterial, or fungal infections to people, most often children. Rabies vaccines are required for in our communities for domestic pets, but there are not approved vaccines for most exotic animals, and that alone should bar contact between these animals and the general public. No matter how many stars on Google some of these places might have, exotic petting zoos are not educational and no benefit to the people of Burnsville. They foster an inhumane view of animals as entertainment instead of an integral part of our ecosystem. I myself went to one as a child, and I remember feeling deeply upset by how the animals were treated. That was 30 years ago, and I'm sad we're still here in 2003 giving these vendors the time of day. We have an AZA-accredited Minnesota zoo just a few miles away that supports conservation and features animals in habitats as close to possible to their natural ones where children can learn about wildlife properly. So I hope you will retain the dignity of the city of Burnsville and vote no on this usage. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. The next speaker is Jessica Barr. Okay. Name and address for the record, please.
My name is Jessica Barr. My address is 116 91st Lane Northeast in Blaine. I'm here to speak against the petting zoo within the Twin Cities. Sustainable Safari claims to have about 100 species of animals inside a mall. Do you think all these wild animals enjoy living inside a mall and being held by humans all day long rather than living in their own lives in their natural habitat? They will not get to enjoy the sunshine on their faces or enjoy the grass under their feet while living inside a mall. Many animals can be found experiencing boredom and pacing, especially when animals not native to Minnesota are forced to live inside a mall all winter for months. Have you asked Sustainable Safari where they obtain all these wild animals from? Some petting zoos obtain from illegal or unethical sources. Petting zoo operators perpetually buy or breed to have an endless supply of cute babies to draw crowds, but these babies are often prematurely taken from their mothers to deny them natural socialization needed for normal development to socialize with humans, then subjected to chronic stress through human interaction. Both the Humane Society of the United States and Animal Rights Coalition have information recommending against petting zoos for obvious reasons. Why do you think two large animal organizations are speaking out against approving this petting zoo? Wild animals used for direct interactions with public, whether for photo opportunities, feeding, rides, or holding, are forced to have encounters with hundreds of people daily when these animals do not naturally interact with humans. Excited guests, especially children, may shout, poke, or tease animals, creating a stressful environment and increasing the likelihood that they can get bit or scratched. Facilities that allow people to directly interact with wild animals sends the wrong message to children that it is okay to subject animals to cruel conditions for human entertainment. Children often bring home more than their parents bargained for, including potentially lethal bacteria, such as E. coli mentioned before. According to HSUS, more than 75 zoonotic diseases can be transmitted from animals to humans, including E. coli, salmonella, rabies, toxoplasmosis, placing children, pregnant women, and the elderly at particularly high risk. Please consider the public health risk here. As we know from COVID, more human interactions with wild animals increase the risk of zoonotic diseases. I'm a hospital pharmacist, and I have volunteered in animal rescue for 13 years, so I've seen some of these animal-to-human diseases. I would also encourage council members to visit Sustainable Safari before making a decision on this petting zoo. If you're basing your review strictly on city code, please consider the following. The purpose and intent of this title is to implement the Burnsville Comprehensive Plan and to promote the general health, safety, and welfare of Burnsville's present and future inhabitants. Health, safety, and welfare do not exclude animals. If Burnsville already has a zoo, why would the city need another zoo inside a mall? A petting zoo inside of a mall would not provide Burnsville with a good reputation and would be a step backwards in regards to animal welfare. For both animals and the safety of people, please do not allow another petting zoo in the Twin Cities. Thank you.
Thank you. Members of the council, those are all of the people who wanted to speak. This is your time. Councilmember Keeley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to hear from the owner of Sustainable Safari, because with all of the communication that we've received and the concerns brought forward by these caring citizens about animals, there's an assumption made that the animals are basically brought into the mall and never see the light of day. And that was my first concern when I heard about this. It's like, how much fresh air are these animals going to get? So there's a lot, I'm sure, that he would like to share on camera with all of us. And before he comes up, if I may, I just want to cite a few facts about the size and magnitude of zoos. According to the Association of Zoos and Aquariums, over 181 million people visit zoos and aquariums that they accredit each year. And they probably don't have every single zoo out there. As it was noted, it's very difficult to get that accreditation. So I don't know what percentage that is, but that's a lot of people. 181 million is more than all of the people who attend NFL, NHL, NBA, and MLB games combined. And then globally, 700 million people visit zoos every year. So this is a massive desire by the American public. They love interacting with animals, and they go to all kinds of zoos to do that. Obviously, we want to make sure that we have a quality zoo. There was a survey done in 2017, I couldn't find anything newer, that showed 73% of U.S. adults either strongly or somewhat support the existence of zoos and aquariums. And there are, it looks like there's varying numbers, but going back 150 years ago, and I believe the New York Zoo would be the oldest, the first zoo was opened, and there's numbers varying from, revolving around 2,000 zoos that exist in the United States. Just one real side note. I grew up in the late 50s and 60s, and I grew up watching Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom. And I just did a search to find out more about that show that I grew up with. And I'm happy to announce that after 60 years from its debut, in 2023, apparently this fall, they're bringing back Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom with a new host, because I think that gentleman may have passed. But so for anybody out there watching, the passion and the love that Americans and people around the world have to interact with nature. There's a lot that interact with birds. There's a lot of, obviously we interact with household pets, cats, dogs, guinea pigs, various types of animals. That goes further than just those household pets, clearly. There's a lot of desire by humans to interact with nature and the living mammals and birds that exist in nature. And I tried to get a sense as to how many birds and mammals are actually in a sort of zoo, like the Minnesota Zoo, the Como Zoo, et cetera. Compared to what's the total estimated population. Couldn't really find the population number, but it is a tiny, tiny fraction of the billions of mammals and birds that exist out there. So I don't want to debate the good and bad. I mean, there's clearly some standards that have been brought forward that I'm very curious about and interested in making sure that we require and hold the owner accountable for, to make sure that these animals, while they are in the mall, which sounds like for a relatively short period of time because they're brought back to the farm and they live outdoors, in more natural environments for most of their life, but they are brought in through the mall for the petting type of thing, which kind of reminds me of the state fair. This Thursday, I'm taking my 2 grandkids, and the first place we're going to is the horse, the cow, the pig, the goat, the chicken, all of those animal barns, because we too have the same craving to interact with, with animals. It's something that I think grounds us. Staying in touch with nature does a lot of things for our mental and psychological health. I think kids growing up having interactions with all types of nature, including animals, is a good thing, but it also needs to be safe, right? Avoid bites, disease, et cetera. So with that, if I may.
Yes. Mr. Pilch, will you? Yes.
So Robert Pills, founder, designer of Sustainable Safari. First off, I'd like to thank you guys for coming and showing your emotion. I do appreciate that. So, I've been doing this a very, very long time, 22 years. I ask myself very often, why do I do this when I have this behind me all the time? And I said this at the Planning Commission, I truly believe we're on the same team. We have 100% different view. I mean, it's 180 degrees difference. I don't want the animals to be abused. I don't want them to be exposed to the wrong things. These animals I've raised them. The reason they're good in the mall is because I raised them. So I raise them as babies, yes. I keep them as long as I possibly can, yes, for their whole life. We have many animals that are geriatric now at my farm because I've raised them. I'm emotionally attached to this stuff. So our guests behind us have put me in a box that is a legitimate box for most people. Animals are abused for centuries and exploited and overused and gotten for financial gain. That is true. And I mean, I can't explain my heart. That's not how I operate. Yes, we got to pay our bills. We have animals. We have food. We have a $90,000 a year food bill, our vet bill. I mean, everything. We take care of these things. We have all the licensing that we have to follow in order to keep these things. So we do everything possible. Heidi had brought up the ZAA being a sham. It's an organization that holds zoos accountable that can't qualify yet for the AZA. Minnesota Zoo, who they brought up as a great zoo, and it is a great zoo, was not accredited when it opened. It takes time to get AZA accredited. The Superior Zoo in Duluth, the oldest zoo in Minnesota, opened in 1900. It was a world-class zoo in the 1920s, 30s, and 40s. They had rhinoceros, giraffes. They were world-class. They did not become an AZA accredited zoo till 1985. And then they lost it because they didn't do things ever right. It's hard to be accredited. We are striving, so against what Heidi had said, we are striving for AZA. It is hard to get there. This organization, yes, I've been doing this for 20 years. Sustainable Safari's mission has been 3 years. 3 years. And we're already speeding ahead towards accreditation either this year or the first part of next year. Other zoos in Minnesota are going through the process right now that have been open for 10 years and 12 years. They're just to the point where they can do that. We are doing things really well. I provided you in the application a 172-page document that I created on where we're going, on what we do for emergencies, how we handle them, how we do veterinary care, the 5 standards of taking care of animals that are on every book on the planet. That's how we do stuff. So I take great pride in what I do. So I can't make everyone happy. We have over 17,000 happy people that have gone through us and commented on our Facebook page and Google reviews. I decided not to ask them to come here. I didn't want you guys here till 4 in the morning, but we have those, and I provided those to you guys so you could see. And yes, there's some bad reviews. There's no business out there that doesn't get bad reviews or anything. These guys help me get better. So I do respect them here. I do appreciate them. They help me get better in things that they bring up. So I can't say much more than that. So if you have some direct questions, I'm really happy to answer them. But
could you just explain the normal cycle of when the animals come from your farm would come into this mall environment and when they would go back to the farm typically?
So really, we run a software program. It's called Animal Care Software. It's graphed out. Every day our animals are visually inspected, I don't know how else to say that. We check every health aspect of the animal every single day, and then it's graphed. These are professional, world-class software that a lot of zoos use. There's several different kind that from Zims to whatever. Well, we use animal care software, and we graph it. So if the animal is showing off, it's hard to explain it other than the animals really tell us when it's time to go. So we handle them. We have at Maplewood, we have 5 healthcare staff, and we have 2 full-time vets that are under contract. They're not ours full-time at our store right now. Heidi brought that up, and our goal is by opening Burnsville, we will employ our own vet on staff for our both facilities. We don't need that right now. So the 1,000 animals that came up in my book, that includes the birds. We have over 600 parakeets. So, I mean, it's a big number of what we already have that we're operating for. When Burnsville kicks in, we will hire a full-time staff or vet on our team. So the only people that do that are AZA zoos. No roadside zoo, as I'm being categorized as, will ever hire a vet. Okay, we are going well and above and beyond with the goal of getting to the accreditation. So to answer your question, it's the animals that are telling us, and of course the weather tells us that. You know, our March, April, May were really rough weather-wise, cold, rainy, crappy. I'm not going to bring a kangaroo home that spent the winter in the mall back and put them outside in the weather we deal with. Keep in mind also, Como Zoo, Minnesota Zoo experiences the same winter that we do, right? Their animals are indoors entirely for the winter months too. So we're being categorized, why aren't, we do things like that? We are doing things like them. So.
Thank you. One follow-up real quick.
Yes, Councilmember Keeley.
A lot of the issues that I've heard and read about revolve around a zoo and a mall, right? Just the smell test goes, wait, something doesn't sound right. Obviously, the Minnesota Zoo has a large indoor area that I've walked through many, many times. Como has the same thing. I think it's the affiliation or the association to the word mall, right? Which is there's no fresh air, there's no roof that opens up, right, type of thing, or options like that. So it's important for us to understand that point you just said. And how would you respond to someone saying, but wait, it's a mall, right?
That's the stigmata. It's our ventilation system is state of the art. Our air is moved every 6 minutes. The entire store is recycled every 6 minutes. At Maplewood, this is. So 11,000 square feet. It's vented out every day. There is no smell. So I mean, we're a mall. There's no hiding around that. No one has done this before, right? So it's a mall. So in the 60s, 70s, 80s, there were petting zoos in the mall. Traditional farm style petting zoos. There's even been some monkeys in the mall. Southdale, I think, in the Business Journal article that came out in our last go around was talking about monkeys in Southview, and I had no idea that was occurred. So there's been always animals in malls. It's just I've taken it to a whole different level. So, we met with Mall of America in 2015, got approved to go there after some discussions like this, and they didn't want a petting zoo in the mall because they used to have one under a roller coaster. And I'm like, that is not me. That's not what I do. That's the traditional petting zoo, exploiting the animals. Noise doesn't matter. I said, no. We want an indoor zoo. We want our own suite. We want our own lighting system, our own ventilation system, something different to bring out the emotional bond. You brought it up, Councilman Dan, on the stats of zoos. There's millions upon millions upon millions of people that visit zoos. And when they're done right, they are incredibly good at giving people lessons on what nature is supposed to be like. Nature's not good anymore. We've destroyed our planet. My goal, my hopes as Sustainable Safari is going to bring out what we can do to help change these animals. These are my ambassador animals. Our animals are ambassadors to the wild. Whether it's, how you see it or not, this is me. So my goal is to teach the public what we have to do and how we can do it to save these animals that are left in the wild. So that's my goal. That's my dream. So.
Councilmember Workman.
Thank you, Mr. Pills. I just have a couple quick questions to follow up on some of the things we just heard. I don't want to belabor the AZA item too much more than we already have, but as I was poking around on their website, I do see they have a pathway program for potential members. Are you engaged in that process?
On the AZA?
Yes.
So my goal is the ZAA first.
ZAA.
And the pathway to accreditation is there. My goal is to open up a relationship with Minnesota Zoo and Superior Zoo to build that as a more direct path for us. So build a mentorship through Superior and Minnesota Zoo. I've already done that. I've already opened up, and I do have contacts into Minnesota Zoo, but that's a long process.
Sure.
That AZA it's going to be years to get to that point.
On their landing page, it says less than 10% of zoos across the country are accredited, so I understand it's probably a tough.
It's extremely
tough
hard.
organization.
That's what I can't stress enough. It's not an easy thing. So
So the first time we reviewed this, what made me pause was a letter we received from the Humane Society about several violations, and it was mentioned again tonight about maybe a former zoo that was run, and then there was a reference to 6 citations that were issued. That was my primary concern the first time we saw it, was some of the history. Would you be able to elaborate on that a little bit and give us a little maybe?
first, I want to clarify the Humane Society of the United States has 0 affiliation with Golden Valley, which is the animals that the rules that can affect us. We have 0 violations with the Humane Society of Golden Valley. So Humane Society of the United States is really an activist organization. So the rule she exploited, she brought out the rules that she cited, the violations that I had. Those were from 10 years ago, prior to us, and they were all non-critical violations, meaning there's 3 categories of violations USDA can cite. Ours were all non-critical. She's brought up 6 times that no one was there. During these inspections 10 years ago, I worked a full-time job elsewhere. So I wasn't at them. I wasn't at my house 24/7. I was trying to build a living. So, that's all I can kind of say about them. So that was a different lifetime for us. So.
Another comment was made regarding, bringing in infant kangaroos, and, you touched on this, so you've got several, is your ranch full of older animals that are being cycled through, their life cycle? How are you keeping these baby animals continuously coming through without running out of room where you're bringing the more mature animals?
We only breed kangaroos and capybaras. We don't breed many animals. So it's, we just keep them as long. We can't keep every single animal. We don't have the space for that, to bring up your point. But if we do rehome an animal, it's back to an accredited facility like us. So we keep them, if they're emotionally attached to us, which most of them are, they're at my facility.
So the ones that are transferred out, you've got a pretty good thumb on where those animals are going, and that they're not going on to Craigslist or something like that.
Correct. That's not who we are. You can do that through this license, but that's not how we operate.
And I'm not questioning your legitimacy. It's just for the sake of the public forum to kind of get some of this stuff out into the air.
USDA guidelines is we can only purchase from an accredited facility, which I screwed up once. That was brought forward in one of the complaints. Not on purpose, of course. It was a screw up. The guy used to have a license and he dropped it and didn't, whatever. It happened. They got rid of it, and now it's out there. To sell an animal, you don't need a USDA license to buy anything. So that's kind of part of the problems in the categories that we're being put into. But who I am is we don't do that. Again, I'm emotionally attached to these animals. They're not just dollar bills to me. So I raised them.
Okay.
And I can't stress that enough. And they can chuckle behind me. It's who I am. That's all I can tell you. So.
That's all the questions I have for right now.
Councilmember Gustafson.
Mr. Pills, just a couple quick questions. You've been open 3 years now?
Correct.
And
4 technically, but got shut down for COVID.
During that period of time, could you have an approximation of how many people have gone through your facility?
350,000.
And of that 350,000, could you tell us how many have been bitten or scratched?
5, maybe.
Okay.
from a, like I said, the planning commission, it could be from a guinea pig to a rabbit to, I mean, there's no incidences of reportable.
My dogs get me sometimes, so.
Correct.
I get that. I want to go to your farm for a minute, if you wouldn't mind. How large is your farm?
10 acres.
And how are the animals kept at the farm?
I have a big pole barn, a heated, it's set up just like the mall is.
Okay. So they can roam around the pole barn, and about how large
Correct,
is that?
and then they can go outside, their pastures,
Is that all fenced in?
correct, yeah.
Okay. So they do have a roaming area at the
Yeah,
farm?
yeah, part of the accreditation process is a double fence, 8 foot high with double barriers for public
And how often
protection.
do you rotate them then?
Again, it's based off the animal. The larger stock, the llamas, we had a camel for a while. That wasn't meant to stay. We got it as, so take a step backwards. We get a lot of animals that are bigger that people give us to acclimate to people, to make them safer. Because zoos aren't open all winter long like we are. So we bring in babies of other people's stuff, get them acclimated, get them social ready for their zoos, and then they go back. So big animals are rotated every 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and the smaller animals are just on a kind of as needed. So again, through our software, we're able to tell that, or just by knowing these animals.
So just to reaffirm one more time, if you open up in Burnsville, at that point, you will hire a full-time veterinarian?
That's our goal, yes.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, those are the questions I had. Thanks.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Pilz. Anyone else, questions for Mr. Pilz or staff? Okay, anyone?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pilz. Okay, thank you. Members of the council, before us,
I'm sorry, I need to ask Councilmember Keeley something. You mentioned in conjunction with the idea that holding animals and being exposed to wild animals can advance or enhance conservation efforts or behaviors, attitudes. And then you mentioned the state fair, and you stopped yourself before you said cute baby animals, but you were talking about the cows and the pigs and the horses.
And the baby ones too.
Right, the baby ones. And I just wondered if you or your grandchildren have given up eating animals because you were so bonded with them at the state fair.
No,
No.
no.
thank you.
Happy
And
to
this
say no.
time,
Proud to say no.
we will not take any more comments from the public. I have, you signed up, we have listened to you. You also had public hearings at the Planning Commission. This is the time for us to deliberate and to talk about what is before us. And I want to thank our staff and also the applicant and to all of the people who are here and all of those who have sent us emails, because what you did is to ask us to be aware of what's going on, and so we were informed and educated. As you heard tonight, we also can do searches up here on the dais, and we do that. But we also rely on our staff on all of the information that we ask them to make sure that we have. And what's important for us is to make sure that we have all of the information that we need with regard to all of the other agencies who have oversight over animal well-being, such as the Department of Fish and Wildlife, the Public Health Department, and so forth, the DNR. And we have had all of that information in our background information, so we've been given all of that. Members of the council, before us is to approve the PUD amendment for the sustainable safari subject to conditions, and to approve the permanent animal exhibition permit as valid until December 31st, 2024, upon conditions. So we can bundle this, or if you want to, we can separate them out. I can approve the PUD amendment, adopt the findings of fact and ordinance, and approve the permanent animal exhibition permit. I can bundle it?
Doesn't matter. Bundle it. It's fine
Okay.
with me.
May I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Councilmember Schultz makes the motion, second by Councilmember Keely. All in favor?
If I may have for discussion?
Oh, yes, discussion.
Uh,
Councilmember Schultz.
Sure. So, in general, I don't, although I go to the Minnesota Zoo, I don't particularly like animals in the zoo. I don't like them in the aquariums. I realize I do eat meat, and I realize when I'm eating meat that I'm eating another sentient being. I get that. Do I think these types of things, like, would I personally want them to exist? No, I don't. I do not care if the mall has more businesses in it, what type of business in it. That is their business. That is not my business, and it is not the function of business on that. There is no reason to not approve this. So it doesn't matter what my personal preference is on certain things. Does not matter. That's not our role. So I will be voting yes on this. There is no reason for me to vote no on this, and it is not the role of government to become involved in the private business if the businesses are following the ordinances and the rules. That's not our deal. So that is my view of how we interact, and that is my explanation of my vote.
Councilmember Workman.
I'd just like to echo some of what Councilmember Schultz just said. I know there were some comments about financial gain to the city. The city is not going to benefit from this or not, whether this gets approved. We've seen some applications come through these doors that were not very well put together with individuals that seemed like they weren't quite sure what they were doing. I don't get that feeling from Mr. Pills. This was a very well-prepared background. Our staff has done their due diligence with our licensing, and so if something does go awry, I've got full confidence in what Jeff's prepared to make sure that we can pivot as quickly as needed if this isn't what we would like it to be as far as the quality of this establishment. So I'm comfortable voting for this with the safeguards that we've put in place. And I would just echo what Councilmember Schultz says, that we're not here to make decisions based on our moral compass. It's fitting our codes and our ordinances. And so that's where we're at.
If you came to government for morality, you came to the wrong place.
Ethics. For the animals. And the safety of the humans in your city.
We understand. Thank you. We heard from you, and I'm taking control of the meeting again. Thank you for your comments. We appreciate all of that. But you also need to appreciate what you hear from the members of the council. So you may agree or disagree with what you hear, but we all have a different lens that we work from. And so you want us to do something, and it isn't something that, when we look from a fair and equitable position in terms of what we do as government. Municipal government is about land use, ordinance, and that's what we do, and code. So we look at all of the other agencies who have oversight. And from my perspective, they have met all of those oversights. You may not agree with what the DNR has done, or USDA, or the Fish and Wildlife, or Human Services, but they all have spoke. So we appreciate that you came here, and you might not like what you hear tonight. But as you have understood, our role is very different. Our role is to look at all of these factors that tell us whether an application that's before us meets what needs to happen with that particular zone and that particular facility. And our staff has done a thorough, comprehensive job in looking at all of that and with regard to our comp plan, our 2040 comp plan. And the Center Village vision for that site, also this particular PUD amendment meets those conditions as well. So that's what you're hearing tonight, is that from a government perspective, we are looking at our role as stewards of the public's trust on all of these things. Now, you don't have to agree with, because you disagree with the kind of use, because you're looking at one thing. We have to look at the totality of everything. So, and I believe that,
Madam Mayor,
we
call the
already know
question.
there is no.
Madam Mayor,
Please,
call the question.
yes, I will call the question, because it doesn't matter.
It's all about
Yeah.
law, but not
No.
about ethics, okay? Yeah.
No compassion.
Yeah.
No compassion.
Call the question.
I've been
Call
before
for
you
vote.
before for
Yes.
animal issues, and it's always the same.
Members of the council.
Screw the animals.
Yep, no compassion.
There's a motion on the floor and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. And the motion carries.
No heart.
Okay,
Money and greed.
thank you.
You're not on the same page, Mr.
Okay, thank you. Members of the council, there are no other items to come before
When
us
you don't
this
get your way,
evening.
just yell.
Yeah, there are no other items to come before the council this evening, and a motion to adjourn is in order.
So moved.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay, and the motion carries. Thank you.